What's up, everybody? This is Devin White, linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're listening to the LCC Network. Go Bucks.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Commissioners Clubhouse and the LCC Network for our final Commissioners Clubhouse episode for quite a while after this. It's bittersweet. This will be the first time since, maybe I want to say like 2016 is the last time. No, technically 2015, I think would be the last time where I didn't do a regular season podcast episode. So needless to say, we're going on 7 years now. It's pretty crazy to think about that, how long I've been doing this, but very glad to be handing over the torch to our other two shows on the LCC Network brand. And, we'll still do the Commissioners Clubhouse, just not as regularly. It'll mostly cover larger league events and stuff. Still debating whether or not I will run it continuously through the offseason like I've done historically. But, so this is it. Needless to say, at least for quite a while, this is our LCC Kickoff Power Ranking show heading into the NFL regular season and the LCC regular season. And, I'm pumped. I feel really confident about my draft. But after I did the power rankings off the show or before the show, I feel less confident. No, I shouldn't say less confident. I'm kind of exaggerating. But what I did, for those that don't know, is I created a power ranking document, a Google document, and I used Fantasy Pros rankings for the most part, at least, and I use those rankings to determine power rankings, but it's not just based off your starters, it is based off depth too. So even if you have like a top tier player at a position, if you're only rostering one player, which is illegal, by the way, you have to roster a minimum of 2 players at every position besides QB. So you're only allowed 1 quarterback unless they're hurt or on a bye week or suspended, Deshaun Watson. But so you did get a penalty if you only had 1 player at a position because 1, it's illegal. 2, more importantly than that, it's a huge liability to roster only 1 player at one position. Like, that's crazy talk. I mean, I don't care how good you think that person's going to be. You're nuts for just rostering 1 player or even considering that. I know some people probably, towards the end of the draft, are like, I just want to get this over with. We all kind of did. So I don't blame anyone, but for accidentally not rostering multiple players at a certain position. So, but you did get a penalty if you did do that. And one other thing before we start the show, as a reminder to all of the LCC GMs that are listening, the deadline to trim your rosters is this Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the deadline to have a legal roster, meaning that you have a minimum of 2 players at every position and no more than 3 players at 2 positions. The deadline for that is Thursday kickoff. If you don't, then Jordan and I will have to go in and basically drop one of your extra players at a position you shouldn't have, and it'll be up to you to add a player to fill in that roster spot. So you've been warned, needless to say. So let's kick this off. Let's kick off our end of preseason / beginning of regular season power rankings. All right. So we're going to kick it off with the Front Yard Conference. We're going to save mine for last. The best conference? No, just kidding. Actually, I didn't do an average conference ranking. I should have done that. That would have been cool. But I think once you see the document, which I'll share with everyone, and once you hear the podcast, I think you're going to find that the Front Yard Conference is loaded. Man, it is. I'm looking at it right now. So let's start off with the Front Yard East Division. So the way I'm going to break this down to you guys is I'm going to go division by division, telling you first, second, third, fourth, and then at the end of when I get done with those divisions, I will tell you the 6 projected playoff teams and their ranking. So first place in the Front Yard East, the Peanut Butter Cups. The Peanut Butter Cups. The Peanut Butter Cups are absolutely loaded. They have a grade of a B plus overall. And so everyone, I forgot to mention this too. I'm going to just keep remembering things as I go through this, obviously, here at 11 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. It's on a plus and minus grade scale. I didn't give anyone lower than a D minus, D as in dog. And obviously no one got higher than an A plus for any position. Now, needless to say, no team has an A plus ranking. No team has an A ranking. I think we have one team maybe with an A minus. So if that tells you anything, these grades are pretty harsh. And these aren't my own grade. I mean, they are my grades, but not really in the sense that I used Fantasy Pros rankings per position. So I did a positional grade for the 6 main starting positions. I didn't do flex because that's just so hard to figure out who's flex in each team. That would have been too much. But I basically did an average for your positional rankings, averaged out for an overall ranking. So yes, Peanut Butter Cup with a B plus, winning the Front Yard East Division. Absolutely loaded. I have their lowest grade at any position as a B, and that is at linebacker. Solid linebacker core for Peanut Butter Cups. That's Colby Knox, for those that don't remember from the draft, or if you just weren't at the draft, that would explain that. But linebacker situation is Logan Wilson, Jalen Phillips, Demario Davis. I think it's a fair grade at a B. And a B is a very respectable grade. I want everyone to know that. A B minus, B, B plus, that's an actually good grade. So like I said, only one team I think has an A minus grade overall, if that tells you anything. So if you're in the B's, you're good. Even C plus isn't terrible. When you get to like C minus, D plus, D minus, D's, like that's not great. And then okay. One more thing before I move to second place in this division is that what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So the way each position got graded is if you had a top 8 player, 1 through 8, at that position, that is the equivalent of an A, right? But if you're on the top end of that 1 to 8 scale, then you get an A plus, right? But again, this factors in depth. So if you've got like Cooper Kupp receiver, and I don't know, like Ed Dixon, I'm just making up a situation right now, as your number 2, then you got penalized for that because you don't have a lot of depth and you're relying entirely on one player. And as we know in fantasy, that can bite you in the butt. So just keep that in mind. That's kind of how that grade went. Then B was anywhere between ranks 9 through 16. C was 17 to 24. And then D to D minus was like everything below that, essentially. So, so let's go to number 2 in the division for the Front Yard East. Is the third leg with a B minus grade, average grade. I have his lowest grade at defensive back with a D minus. Not very good, honestly. I think Charles would admit that his DB situation isn't great with Kareem Jackson and Andre Cisco. It's just, I mean, Jackson's been respectable, don't get me wrong, but I don't think anyone's really expecting a lot from him based off Fantasy Pros rankings and other rankings that I've seen, and doesn't have a great backup either. But Charles's highest ranking at any position is an A, and it's actually a wide receiver and quarterback. So Charles is kind of he has great talent at some positions, but at other positions he needs some work, and I think that can be done easily through free agency or if he does a trade, because he has some depth at positions. At running back he's got Alvin Kamara, Tony Pollard, but I guarantee you Tony Pollard is going to be used to some degree in Dallas. He might be a cheap trade piece somewhere. I'm not saying I was going to pay a lot for him, Charles, but if you're trying to get like a backup safety or something, who knows, maybe. Or you also got DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill, two stud receivers there. You could easily trade one of them. I doubt you're going to flex a receiver. So, in fact, that's probably what I would do if I were you, if I was trying to, boost my confidence at defensive back. All right, so third place in that division is Jiu-Jitsu Jesus. He got a C+ grade. His highest grade is a defensive line, get an A+. Aaron Donald's there. I mean, there's nothing else to say there. I mean, just loaded defensive line. Lowest grade at running back, and I think everyone, including Matt, would also agree with that. I mean, if you look at it, his running back situations, Mike Davis in Baltimore, Kareem Hunt in Cleveland, Sony Michel, who's a free agent. None of those guys were legitimate starters. I think this is Matt's going to be hemorrhaging offensively because of this. He desperately needs to find a running back through free agency. Maybe try to make a big time trade for a running back if someone's got two of them. I just think that this situation right here is really, really holding Matt back. And that kind of rhymed. But I mean, Matt could be a fringe playoff team if he could fix that position up, because that's what's killing his overall grade. He's pretty average everywhere else for the most part. And then last place, and this is no fault of Billy Ray, GM of Detroit Bad Boys. So he left the league at the beginning, kind of middle of the offseason. After keepers, he didn't get his keepers in, he left. Well, we talked him into joining literally in the last 3 or 4 rounds of the draft. And at that point, we had to kind of draft that team for him because Logan, who was the GM of this franchise, which was named, God, I've already forgotten his team name, Thunderdome. He was left in a situation because of Daquan. Daquan really is the culprit for this franchise being so deplorable right now. Absolutely no draft capital going in the draft. Not a whole lot of depth either. And that really hurt Billy's team. I mean, honest to God, Billy, we did our best to try to make this roster the best we possibly could, but there wasn't much we could do. And that's probably why the other guy just kind of bailed, because he was like, why should I put any effort into this? But anyways, Billy's highest grade here is, at any position, is like QB, which is sad because his starting quarterback is Jared Goff, who is the temporary starter over Zach Wilson on his team because Zach Wilson's an IR for him. Not in real life, but in fantasy, he is. His lowest grade, it's actually it's tied between 3 positions: running back, defensive line, and DB. All 3 of those are D minuses. Billy Ray's team is a solid D. D is in dog, not B is in boy. Detroit Bad Boys is, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it, the worst rated team in the league going into week 1. It's, in fact, on a 1 to 12 scale, so 1 being a D minus and a 12 being an A plus, the average for this team is a 1.8. So I literally had to round up just to get him to a D instead of a D minus. It's pretty bad there in Detroit right now for the Bad Boys. But I fully expect Billy Ray to have that team firing on all cylinders by the start of next year, probably. It's going to take him a while to rebuild that situation. Front Yard Central Division, here we go. First place with an A minus grade. You heard it, ladies and gentlemen. The highest rated team here in the league, at least by point average and letter grade, is the Barnyard. And I fully did not expect that. And everyone's probably who's listening is like, what did he just say? The Barnyard? Really? Yes, the Barnyard. And it's so freaking funny because the Barnyard, was Mafali's team. For those who were in the league last year, who traded away all his talent, which he didn't have any to begin with, for draft picks and all sorts of stuff. And luckily for the Barnyard, for LJ, that is, who's the GM, rookie GM, he inherited a very great situation. In fact, I think some people would argue LJ was a little sloppy in some of his trades at the beginning of the offseason. But by the time we got to the draft, I think LJ kind of had figured things out, and he had enough draft picks to where those mistakes didn't even matter, those trades, because he had so much other, draft capital, he could just blow picks away, basically. But yeah, he is a 9.5 average on a 12-point scale, so that's an A- for those that don't know. His highest grade is a defensive back. He is an A+. I don't think I've ever seen a better DB core in the league, in league history, in fact, because of this. Let me tell you his players. For those who don't know, we got Jamal Adams and Derwin James. If you look on Fantasy Pros, it's literally top 2 DBs in the league. Just a stacked team. I mean, his worst position, and this could bite him in the butt, is running back. He has a C, and I think LJ could probably agree with that ranking. He's got Breece Hall, Devin Singletary, and Ramondre Stevenson. So not a lot of depth, relying on a rookie running back in New York with the Jets. I'm trying to remember the last time they had a legitimate top 12 running back. Is it Curtis Martin? It can't go that far back. That seems ridiculous. Potentially, though, if that says anything. So, yes, the running back situation isn't great, but he has so much depth at every position that he can afford a consistent 20-point game, 18-point game from his running back, which is basically nothing for running backs in our league. He can afford that easily and still be a great playoff team. I have him, and Fantasy Pros has him winning the Front Yard Central Division. So let's go to Hunter of Champions here, who has a B+ letter grade, a 9.0 point scale. He has an A+ at quarterback, his highest rated position, thanks to Jordan doing that trade in the offseason and getting none other than Justin Herbert, who is a top 3, I think, quarterback in Fantasy Pros. His lowest grade is a defensive line, and he got dinged really hard here. Otherwise, Hunter probably would actually be the highest ranked team in the league right now. But it's because he has Grady Jarrett, Vita Vea, and Trayvon Walker, and none of them are rated very high on Fantasy Pros, although I think there's a lot of value in Grady Jarrett and even Vita Vea, just because of the fact that defensive tackles now get more points because of tackles. Compared to previous years. And Trayvon Walker, I think, has a lot of upside. So I do think that grade is a little unfair. But again, I wanted to remove my bias out of this system. I didn't want anyone to accuse me of favoring anyone. I wanted to use a non-biased source, even if I didn't agree with all of the rankings and grades. I just felt like that was the easiest and fairest way of doing things. But Hunter's still loaded here. I mean, if you look at his roster, he also got dinged for only having one running back. He has Najee Harris, and that's it. First of all, silly move. Again, putting everything on one player that is dangerous, that really will bite you in the butt. But on top of that, you have to have 2 running backs. So that means he's going to have to cut a player another position. So it's going to be something to watch out for, to see what Hunter does what running back he adds as his backup. So in third place in the Front Yard Central Division, this is another good team. Shuttlecocks with a B+ grade, 8.5 on the point scale. B+ a QB. I don't know why I mentioned that, because it's not his highest position. It's actually wide receiver. He has an A+. Honestly, possibly the best wide receiver core this year of any team in the LCC. His lowest grade is linebacker. The linebacker position here for him, it didn't pan out great. I'm a little shocked that right now, this could change, but he has Cody Barton on the taxi squad, which means he's kind of indicating, showing his cards here, that he's probably going to cut him. I would actually keep him on this roster. even if it meant cutting someone like TJ Edwards or Alex Anzalone, I think is how you pronounce his last name. But he has Denzel Perryman, and Denzel Perryman was a top-notch linebacker in our league last year. He had 545 points, total stud. I actually think he's going to be pretty good, but Fantasy Pros just isn't a big fan of him, and that's what killed his grade. Me personally, I would have given him a higher grade at linebacker, but just not a lot of depth, not a lot of great depth, and relying on a guy who isn't a great NFL linebacker in my opinion, but definitely a good LCC linebacker in Denzel Perryman. Definitely a good squad though for Shuttlecock's. Good rookie GM. I mean, we got two. It's gonna be a battle for rookie GM of the year, guys. It's really gonna be a fight to win that award. Last year, it was between like three different 3-win teams. It was kind of crazy. But this year, I mean, it's gonna be fully earned, 100%. We also got Mr. 295 here. And the Front Yard Central Division, last place, but honest to God, really good grade here. I think he might have a higher grade than my own team, but he has a B- in a 7.3 point scale ranking. Very, very respectable team. His highest grade is a linebacker with an A+, man. Possibly the best linebacker core. I mean, the Front Yard Central Division, no joke, is the best division in the LCC this year, without a doubt. It just totally loaded. At linebackers, Blake Martinez and Roquan Smith. And he's got Kayvon Thibodeau just kind of chilling back there who's injured. So it's just remarkable how great of a team that rookie GM Coleman Kennedy put together here this offseason. Kudos to you, man. You did a good job. I'm sure you don't probably see yourself as a lot worse team in this division, but worst team in the best division in the LCC could still make the playoffs because they have a B- grade. So let's go over. Oh, and then their lowest grade, positional grade, and I think you'd probably agree here is running back. You got a D+ because the fact that he only has Josh Jacobs, who's not rated very high in Fantasy Pros, may not even be a true lead back in that offense this year, and has no one to back him up. Mr. 295 forgot to roster a second running back, so he's going to have to go back and add one before next Thursday, before kickoff. And he has the roster room. He doesn't have to cut anyone to make that happen, really. He just needs to go add a running back, so that should be easy enough. And that'll boost his grade up a little bit, but not a whole lot. So let's go to the Front Yard West Division here. Number 1 in that division right now, and it's the kiss of death. I'm sorry, Peyton. It's you, Guardians of the Galaxy. He's got a B+ grade, 8.5 point scale grade. His lowest position, and I think he's another team that's going to probably agree with this piece, is at quarterback. Peyton doesn't have a great quarterback. He's got Baker Mayfield, and I'm a diehard Panther fan, and if I would have done this grade, it would have been way higher. But thank God I used Fantasy Pros and took my own bias out of it. Based off their rankings, Peyton, you got a D+ at QB. That's your lowest grade. Your highest, though, is an A, and it's tied between defensive line and linebacker. Just totally loaded on defense again this year, man. Just a solid team all around. But this is nothing new, guys. For those that don't know, every single year, I'm not even joking, every single year, Peyton is like projected the best team in his division or in the conference or in the league and in the offseason. And then we get to the regular season and he loses like 5 straight or something crazy. Maybe makes the playoffs barely or just barely misses the playoffs. This is nothing new. I feel like everyone probably expected this just based off history in this league. Second place in that division, very respectable grade here. Beg for G-Rag has a B, solid B, and an 8.3 point grade. Highest graded position at quarterback with an A+ grade. And his lowest grade is at wide receiver. He has a C-, just because of the fact that if you go look at BP's roster, it's Chase Claypool, Jerry Jeudy, and Alan Lazard. And I'm actually a big Jerry Jeudy fan. I like him more than Cortland Sutton. I hate you, Peyton, because he stole my guy in the offseason waiver wire. But I would have given you a higher grade, man. But Fantasy Pros really just wasn't crazy about Alan Lazard or Chase Claypool, which really pulled your grade down at receiver. So not a lot of great depth, but in my opinion, I think those guys are great for streaming. Like if, God forbid, Jerry Jeudy goes down, I think you got those two guys you could roll with week in, week out, just flip-flop them, who has the best matchup. So I personally don't think that grade is fair with a C-, but again, I wanted to remove my bias out of this. So that's that. So next up, third place in the division is Burrow's body count with a solid B grade, 7.5 point scale. His highest rated position is tied actually between QB and receiver with an A-. As Burrow's body count. So, of course, he's got Joe Burrow as quarterback, and of course, he's projected to be great again this year. His lowest position, though, is at defensive line. He's got Gregor Rousseau, who I'm a big fan of. Fantasy Pros has him rated kind of low. I kind of think he's a diamond in the rough this year in a lot of IDP leagues. He's got Draymond Jones, who's basically not even ranked, essentially, which also killed Zach's grade at defensive line. So, I think Zach is possibly graded around where I am, but he's finishing third in his division. That's just how tough this division is. Now we get to Buck Your Mother. Isaac Eubanks is back in the league, everyone. If you don't know, Isaac had been in the league for years, between 2016 all the way to 2000. He left in the offseason 2020. So between 2016 and 2019, he never missed the playoffs. Very consistent. He was always in my division. Isaac and I go back to high school together and college as well. Love Isaac to death. He was stuck in a nearly an impossible situation. Honest to God, Isaac put together the best possible draft he could with the situation he was given, which was inheriting only Jameis Winston. His entire roster consists of Jameis Winston going into the draft, and had some decent draft capital, but still not enough, in my opinion, to make it a year one turnaround. But his letter grade is a C- and a point scale of 4.3. His highest graded position is tied between wide receiver and linebacker. He's got a B+ in both. Receivers got Brandon Cooks, Jalen Waddle, and Robert Woods. Linebacker, Miles Jack, Levante David. I really love situations in both those positions for him. I think that's solid. His lowest graded position is tied between defensive back and defensive line. Fantasy Pros really just shit on Joey Bosa and Matt Judon, which killed his grade there. I really think it's more of a solid C. But, I just want to take my own bias out of this. At defensive back, he's got John Johnson, Lewis Sine, and Jaquan Brisker. So Brisker has a lot of potential as a rookie. He is questionable, I think, for week one right now. Fantasy Pros had him rated super low. Same with Lewis Sine. I think John Johnson may have been his highest graded player on Fantasy Pros, which still wasn't good. But again, one of those situations where I think Fantasy Pros kind of whiffed on some of the IDP rankings, and they kind of always do to some degree. That's why I've always kind of made my own for the most part. But very respectable draft by Isaac. I kind of expected that, though. That's why I really needed someone like Isaac to step in an emergency situation, take a team where the GM texted me 12 hours basically, or 16 hours before the draft started. So I knew if there's anyone who would have a shot at making this team somewhat relevant, it would be him. So thank you, Isaac, again, for taking that on. Not a great situation, but I think you can still easily get some wins this year. All right, so let's go to the Backyard East, the best conference. I'm just kidding. Maybe not this year, but the Backyard East division, this is, again, not my rankings. I am projected to be the first team in this division with a B- grade and a 7.3 point scale. Again, if we're talking about conferences here, I think that says a lot. I'm the highest graded team in my own division, but I'm only a B- team. We just saw other divisions that everyone at least had a B-. So, front yard is stacked. So at quarterback, I don't know why I'm not going to mention my own team really in depth. I'm just going to say highest graded position for me is linebacker. Lowest grade is defensive line. I'm going to move on to Jordan here. So Jordan has a C-plus grade average and a 6.3 point scale average. His highest graded position is a QB with Pat Mahomes with an A. His lowest graded position, just like me, is a D- at defensive line. Jordan, you and I obviously think very different than the Fantasy Pros quote-unquote experts because the way we targeted our defensive linemen very different than the way Fantasy Pros graded them. Yeah. Jordan's in a situation where, luckily for him, I don't think our division's very tough this year. I think it's kind of like a two-man race for the most part in our division. So I would fully expect, that's not a big jump between a C plus and a B minus. I think either of us could win that. Next up, we actually got Step Rose Fantasy Company, who has a C plus grade, but only a 5.6 point average. It's because I rounded up for him. You're welcome, Matt. His highest graded position is at defensive line. He has a A minus grade. His lowest graded position is at defensive back with a D plus. Matt Mccarson, man, I haven't seen a lot from him. He had plenty of opportunity this offseason, I think, to improve this team, but he didn't. He didn't really do much this offseason at all. He got Deshaun Watson off offseason waiver wire. He was now suspended for a majority of the season or half of it for fantasy purposes. And so he's rocking Mac Jones as his starting quarterback temporarily. His DB situation is really not great. He's got Adrian Amos, who's solid, but then that's it. There's Andrew Wingard after that. He's, kind of up and down, not great. I think Matt Mccarson, he's only a couple players away, honestly, from having a pretty solid team. Running back's pretty weak. He only has David Montgomery and Chuba Hubbard. I love Chuba, but no one else does. So, enough said there. Third place in the Front Yard East Division, Eastside Brawlers with a C-plus grade and a 5.5 point scale grade. His highest graded position is actually tied, a three-way tie between wide receiver, defensive line, and linebacker, all solid B grades. Eastside Brawlers, this is the team, honestly, if we're talking about teams that are a couple players away from actually making a playoff run, this is potentially it. So, defensive line, Brian Burns, Alex Highsmith, who I also like. Great duo there at defensive line. Linebacker, it's C.J. Mosley, and then after that, there's not a lot of depth. He could have actually had a higher linebacker grade, but it's Kenneth Murray and Jermaine Pratt. I don't know if he's going to cut Jermaine Pratt, but that's probably who I would cut on this roster because I think... Well, no, it looks like it's all legal now. Never mind. He fixed everything. Defensive back also not great. He's got Javon Holland and then backup Jabril Peppers at the moment. I don't know if that's temporarily due to injuries and stuff, but Jabril isn't even projected to be starting in New England. And his running back position consists of two running backs in the same team, so they're not great either. But Kenneth Murray is a rookie. I think there's a lot of upside there, so... so that's the Front Yard East Division. The Front Yard Central Division at first place. One of the highest graded teams in the entire league with a B plus letter grade, but a 9.0 even point scale grade is Sandstorm Troopers. Big Oss leading the charge here. Honest to God, one of the most balanced teams in the entire league. His highest grade at any positions with an A at defensive back. His lowest grade is a three-way tie between running back, wide receiver, and defensive line with a solid B. He doesn't get any lower than a B. He doesn't get any higher than an A. That is a solid roster. Let me go pull it up real quick. So, Sandstorm Troopers has, he was very proud and very happy to get Tom Brady in the first round of the draft. Not a lot of QB depth this year in the draft. So, very good move on his part. He needed one. But honest to God, dude, he is kind of stacked. He's got Jeremy Chin at safety, which he could, in theory, potentially move to the linebacker if he needed to. I think he has more upside at safety, though. And Jordan Whitehead, who's also solid. Linebacker, Christian Kirksey, Devin White, Matt Milano, defensive line, Leonard Williams, who Fantasy Pros has rated way higher than I would rank him. And and Jonathan Greenard, who I'm obviously in love with. So, very solid defense there, and a good offense too for the most part. His receiver situation with Michael Pittman as a starter is okay, but in my opinion, not a lot of depth there. But it'll be interesting to watch this division because this is arguably the best division in the Backyard Conference. Second place is the Spurs with a B+ letter grade and an 8.8 point skill grade. So if that says anything, Cameron and Austin are neck and neck for the division. I fully expect that to be the case this year too. Cameron's lowest grade is at QB and defensive back, both at a C+. I think that's pretty fair, all things considered. Cameron, of course, did not win his division last year, won the league last year and the conference, of course. But Trevor Lawrence at QB and at DB, he's got Jesse Bates, who is great, but then not a lot of good depth behind that. Deshaun Elliott, not rated very highly by Fantasy Pros, and the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, okay, based off Fantasy Pros rankings, but not great. I like him a little bit more than they do, but again, these aren't my rankings, player rankings, this is theirs. So that's why Cameron's a little bit lower, but his highest position, I think we got to mention that, is running back with an A+. It really should be A++, because somehow we allowed Cameron to get Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. My God, it's not fair. Cameron, honestly, that is an interesting thought. Cameron could actually, if he wanted to, try to trade one of those running backs, for a backup running back, and then maybe a defensive back and a quarterback to upgrade those positions and have a more even and balanced roster. I'm interested to see if it comes down to him doing that later in the year, especially if Trevor isn't the guy and he can't find a good quarterback through streaming, and if he doesn't have a great defensive back who's consistent. I fully expect, though, Jesse Bates will be just fine back there for him. So, all right, so let's go to third place in division. Backyard Central Division, Steel Curtain, with a C+ letter grade and a 5.6 point skill grade. His highest graded position is at running back with an A. His lowest graded position is a defensive back with a D-. Cody, I don't really, agree with the defensive back grade there for you, but they don't really like Terrell Edmonds, to say the least. And L'Jarius Sneed, they're not very high on either. But his highest grade at any position is at running back. He has got Austin Eckler, who is of course, a stud, and Travis Etienne, which will be very interesting to see now that we get to see him play in the regular season as a Jaguar. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. If he does good enough, he could actually flex him. Who knows? Because in a PPR league, a guy like Travis Etienne could be very, very dangerous. So while Cody is a C+ grade and in third place in this division, I think this team has a higher ceiling than that. I really think this is like a B+ ceiling type team that could easily make the playoffs. Fourth place in division, I think we all knew this. One's a janitor, Will. I don't know what he was doing the whole offseason. He didn't keep any players just like Billy, but he decided to stick with it, which I fully respect. And the draft, man, I just don't know. Like, all of us were just like, what is Will doing back there? He's like drafting receivers left and right. At one point, I swear to God, I thought he had like 8 receivers, but I guess it was only 4 if you include tight end Kyle Pitts. But his highest graded position, of course, is receiver. He actually has an A there because of the fact that he's got Hunter Renfrow, Adam Thielen, Travis Kelce, and he has Kyle Pitts that looks like he's going to drop. I'm just now realizing that he might be dropping Kyle Pitts, and I'm like, holy crap, I actually might spend some fab on him. That's interesting. His lowest graded position, though, is a 3-way tie. All at defense, defensive line, linebacker, DB, all have got a D-. Because, again, Will went very heavy in receiver. I guess he plans on flexing it. He's only got one defensive lineman, so he got a penalty plus it's Austin Johnson, who's not rated very high on Fantasy Pros. He's got Alex Singleton, not rated very high by Fantasy Pros, and only one linebacker, so he got penalized for that. And a defensive back. He's got two corners and one safety, who's Adrian Phillips. Not rated very high either. So, yeah, Will has a lot to do. If I'm Will, I'm definitely trading two of those receivers like tonight if I can to upgrade a defense because it's not looking good, man. So let's move on. So again, Will, by the way, got a C- letter grade and a 3.5 point skill grade. Backyard West Division, give me more Jameson. Projected as the winner here for this division. I think everyone kind of saw that though for the most part. Highest graded position for him, letter grade wise, was at defensive line. He got a solid A. No, sorry, I'm looking at a different team. My bad. Quarterback, sorry, he has a solid A. His lowest grade is tied between linebacker and wide receiver with a C-. Marquise Brown, they're not as high, I think, as Jameson is on him. And Juju Smith-Schuster, they're not super high on. And a linebacker... Wait, did I say linebacker earlier? Yeah, linebacker, where he got a C- as well. He's got Rashaan Evans. He's got Aluakon and Al-Sahir, who had a good season, honestly, but they're not very high on most of those guys. Even Foye, they're kind of, like, I think behind the top 24 on him. So, honestly, though, I think Jameson is a little bit better than that, than a 7.5 point skill grade and a B letter grade. Because I don't agree with those linebacker grades at all. The wide receiver I can kind of see, but DL definitely not. Definitely not. Second place in that division, we got Protect the Booty with a solid B grade, 7.0 point skill grade. His highest graded position is a defensive line with an A. His lowest grade position is tied between running back and defensive back, with both C-. D line for Tyler, man, it's looking pretty to say the least. At defensive line, he's got Shaq Barrett and Cam Jordan, both a little bit older, but Fantasy Pros kind of likes them both, so that's why he got that good of a grade, honestly. But what's really killing Tyler, in my opinion, personally, and even his overall grade, is running back. He's got Cam Akers, who may not be the lead back anymore there. James Cook, rookie running back, in an offense where the quarterback really is the RB1. And Brian Robinson, who's doubtful for week 1 even for Washington. So he also got penalized for only having one wide receiver / tight end who's active on the roster. He is going to have to promote someone off taxi squad probably, just so he can have a legal roster and everything. Or I guess he could add and drop someone. But yeah, Tyler, very respectable grade there with a B grade, letter grade, and a 7.0 point skill grade. We also have 2 girls, 1 cup here, third place in the division with a solid C letter grade and a 4.6 point skill grade. Highest graded position is a 3-way tie. Quarterback, running back, and linebacker are all B-. And lowest grade is tied between defensive line and DB with a D-. Definitely a better year, I expect, for Eddie. I think Eddie's team is a lot better than it was last year. Like, light years better, if that says anything how bad his situation was last year. But I do think that some of his positions aren't great, like defensive line. I think he has a lot of work to do there. His safety position isn't even that great in my opinion in terms of depth. And linebacker is just Cole Holcomb for the most part. He really needs to work on his depth at defense as a whole. I think he could do that. I think we're going to see a big week 1 out of Darren Waller and potentially Allen Robinson for that matter. And maybe even Jarvis Landry. So those could be trade pieces to add some more defensive players if needed. But solid C grade there for Eddie and 2 girls, 1 cup. So last place in the division for the Backyard West is the Libertad Lobos with a C- grade. in a 4.16 point skill grade. His highest graded position is a B, with Matt Stafford at QB, and his lowest grade is a defensive back. Really not good for the Lobos as a whole, but at DB especially. He's got Brandon Jones, Grant Delpit, who's questionable, and Julian Blackmon. Even Grant Delpit isn't awesome. I mean, I did want him in the later rounds, but not someone I'd feel comfortable maybe being my lead guy. So I do think that Alex has some work to do during the regular season to fix that. His running back situation isn't looking good either. He's got Antonio Gibson, Damian Harris, who was, I think, recently cut, and Michael Carter. Just not a lot of depth there, really, and not a true starter, in my opinion, at running back. As receiver situations, Rashad Bateman, Devontae Parker, not great about that, or just hyped about that either. I think Alex has a lot to do if he wants to have a shot at making the playoffs in general, but especially winning that division. He's going to have to wheel and deal to get some more talent, I'm thinking. All right, so I actually messed this up. I should have told you guys the projected playoff seeding for the Front Yard Conference already, but I guess I'm just going to do them all in one. So let's get to it. So the projected playoff seeding for the Front Yard Conference, at number 1 seed is the Barnyard. Number 2 seed, we have got Peanut Butter Cup. 3, Guardians of the Gridiron. 4, Shuttlecocks. 5, Beg for G-Reg. And 6, Burrows Body Count. And then in the Backyard Conference, we've got the number 1 seed as Sandstorm Troopers. Number 2 seed, Give Me More. Number 3 seed, myself, Roebuck Leprechauns. 4 seed, the Spurs. 5 seed, Protect the Booty. And 6 seed, Afternoon Delights, barely. So it's going to be tight. I think those are the projected playoff teams. Of course, who knows? At least 50% of that might be totally wrong, as we all know, with injuries and guys underperforming, other players overperforming, trades that'll happen, people will add and drop. Like, there's a million things that are going to happen. I do think, though, those top 4 teams, for the most part, in both conferences, are essentially a lock, in my opinion, for making the playoffs. I'll definitely be sure to share the document with you guys. I may even put together a graphic and put it on Twitter. But thanks for listening, everyone, for our final Commissioners Clubhouse podcast of the off season. And for a while, again, we'll probably do one later in the regular season, but not right away at least. Looking forward to listening to those new show, or to our new show, LCC Game Day, and our second year show, LCC After Dark. Should be a blast, guys. Best of luck to everyone in the season, except for the teams in my division. Just kidding. I love you guys. But I'll catch you guys in, I don't know. I guess next time we do one of these. All right. Best of luck, everyone. We'll see y'all later.